I'm the itinerant voice actor Carl Bishop for Wise Brother Media, and today I'm talking to, I'm getting a little verklempt here, Rick, because I'm talking to a radio legend, Rick Dees. Oh, my God.
What a joy to be on. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. It's great to have a chance to talk to you. We're both have so much in common because I've been on the radio. You're also a voice actor. You're also a musician. I am as well, both of those things. Here I am talking to this guy who has done this show I've heard since I was a kid, this Top 40 show on a weekly basis. And, you know, one thing I wonder about is that the music changes week after week, but it's essentially the same show. So how do you keep it fresh? Like, what do you do to make it interesting for you and to keep it fresh for everyone else that's listening?
The music, and Carl, thank you so much. What an honor to be on with you. I feel like I'm going to hear the voice track of my favorite Mercedes commercial when I hear your voice. It rattles my sternum, and what a joy to work with you, sir.
Thank you.
But, interesting. I absolutely love music, so it changes every week. And I kind of take it as a challenge to take the listener into the depths of the mind of the people who create the music, because there's always something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For example,
you're right.
I mean, Taylor Swift, now just turned 27, is writing music, but where does she write? Where does she get inspired the most?
Yeah.
And, you know, in her case, it's in her kitchen. In her case, she says, in the kitchen and on a plane. And then if you dig deeper, you say, now, is this a plane that goes at 38,000 feet or a plane that goes at 45,000 feet? Because when you get to 45,000 feet, that's a private jet.
Yeah. Well, and so you're digging deeper in there. You're getting the full story. Now you know that secret, because I figured out early on, especially in the days when I was on the radio in the mid-90s to 2000, early 2000s, the choices for the music were no longer in my hands. It wasn't where the jocks were picking the songs anymore. So I realized early on my job was to make everything in between the songs and the commercials as interesting and fun as possible, because that's my area, that's my stage. Mm-hmm. And that's where I had the most fun. And I got to be an afternoon drive jock in a top 10 market, Houston, Texas, top rated in my day part, in my demographic. And then I was sailing on, I was doing great, and I got fired.
Oh, don't you hate that?
Yeah.
Here's what happens. Sometimes you can have the number one show.
Yes.
And anyone listening now, think about this. Let's say you work on a production line and you create more widgets than anybody, and you get the Employee of the Month award and everything. What happens in radio is that you can be number one, then they change the format from above, from some city away, and you're out of work. And if you have a family or whatever you're doing, it's a challenge.
Yeah. And in those days when radio stations were conglomerating, it was, you know, you really, the talent wasn't in charge anymore, and it became sales and programming that started to take the reins. And unless you were powerful and could, you know, in your case, you already had your own, you know, network, and no one could fire you at that point. You were kind of screwed, and so I made my way out of radio because I was like, well, I didn't make it to that point where I was successful enough where I could say, you know, take this, I'm going to go do my own thing. So I moved on to voiceover, and I learned that from the production director. I walked in, I used to hang out with him in between my shows, or, you know, when I played a long song, and I'd figure out, I was like, hey, what are you doing over there? Like, I hear you doing like a commercial for a car dealership. He said, yeah, I just made $200 on top of my salary. Really? Wow, show me how to do that. So I learned how to do the production side of it. And I started doing my own commercials, and I said, well, geez, I made more money today than I did in a whole month doing radio. So
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, because, you know, Rick, it's really...
Those who don't know, too, Carl took that money and got a flea-infested apartment in New York City and then bought a house that was getting ready to be torn down in upstate New York that was decaying and had a backyard the size of a postage stamp. And what a life it has been.
Man, I am a success now, right? Well, Rick, now you still do a show called Daily Dees as well as the Top 40 Countdown. Why the heck didn't you retire? Are you bored?
No, there's no such thing as retirement. Again, here it was for me. I decided to go and do a syndicated show that can run at any time rather than get up. The only change I made was that I didn't get up at 3:55 every morning because I did that for 25 years.
Yeah.
And people would come up and say, hey, you do the morning show. I bet you get used to getting up at 3:55. And I always say, well, do this. Slam the door on your head at 3:55 every morning and tell me if you get used to that. You don't.
Yeah.
So now, here's my normal body clock. I go to bed about sometime between 11 and 11:30 at night. I naturally wake up at about 6:30 and then just kind of stare at the ceiling and think about the day. And then at about 10 till 7, roll out. And sometime after that, I work out for about an hour. I then go into our studio complex, and I work for the rest of the day doing that. I have a farm in Kentucky that is a working farm that, from saying all of these, hello, this is Taylor Swift type of stuff on the radio, I was able to buy. And so I have the farm, and then it's just one thing after another. I love doing what I do.
What are some of your pursuits beyond radio? Like, I hear you have a cookbook right now, right?
Oh, well, thank you. One thing I love to do, and Carl, this is interesting, going back to the exercise, I'm one of those. I interviewed a guy named Jack LaLanne, arguably the original trainer of America. And I talked to him when he was 92 years old.
Wow.
And I said, Mr. LaLanne, you must love working out. And this is great. He said, I hate it. I hate it, Rick. I hate it every day at 4:30 a.m.
Oh, man.
Meaning that he said, listen, you have to think about exercise like brushing your teeth. Normally you would not go an entire day without brushing your teeth.
Right.
And so you just have to think of it like brushing your teeth. And he said, what I think is good to do is stretch a little bit, but then get the cardio out of the way first.
Yeah.
Even if you just do 15 to 20 minutes, build up by 1 minute every day. And then he said, if you do 25 to 30 minutes of cardio, that's okay. Just do it as often as you can. Think of it like brushing your teeth. And then after that, everything else is icing on the cake. But I thought about Jack LaLanne. So that's out of the way. And then what I love to do is my hobby. After I've worked that off, my hobby is baking.
Wow, that's so cool. I love to bake myself.
So I've come out with a book. I've put it together. It's taken my entire life to put it together, but it's a very high-end kitchen tabletop book called Rick Dees Top 40 All-Time Greatest Desserts.
I love it.
So these are the top 40 desserts I have collected from going around and comparing desserts all over the world. They're the most approachable, the easiest to bake. There's no phyllo dough or any complicated stuff like that.
Now, I love to bake a pie, Rick. So tell me, do you guys have a pie crust recipe in there?
Oh, yes. In fact, on page 19, this is the pie crust recipe that is gone through every test possible, and it's come up the number one pie crust. Okay. And you say, well, what makes it number one? Well, first of all, natural ingredients, just unbleached flour, whatever that you want, and put the flour in there, not self-rising. But into that, here it is, ice-cold butter and lard.
Whoa.
Not Crisco, not vegetable shortening, but lard, L-A-R-D.
Yep.
You can get it at every supermarket. Butter and lard together make the best pie crust. And what I do is get it ice-cold. You can put tiny little bits of the butter, tiny little bits of the lard, then put on these plastic gloves, the thin plastic gloves, and then just kind of do it with your fingers. Not a lot, just barely mix the ingredients. Put in ice water and vodka, which is in the recipe, and then put it together with your fingers, separate it into two mounds, mash it down into just very lightly into two about 1.5, 2-inch discs. Put that in the refrigerator, then bring them out later on after they chill, and roll them into two pie crusts.
Oh, now why the vodka? What's that all about?
Here's what it is. Vodka is 60% alcohol. So, and then 40% water. So what happens is 40% alcohol.
Yeah, the other way around, yeah.
Yeah, and so the alcohol burns off, meaning that there's less gluten. Gluten is that stuff that makes it feel less flaky.
Yeah.
So you have a flakier pie crust with the vodka.
Aha. So that's the secret. So the part of that liquid burns off as the alcohol when it heats, and then it doesn't create as much.
Yes, there's no alcohol. I mean, if you have a problem using alcohol, I guess you could use white vinegar, but it's better to use the vodka because all of the alcohol burns off.
Yeah, that is so cool. Now, we started this into talking about baking in the cookbook with the fact of how do you give back, and I've heard that you're giving the proceeds of this to the Salvation Army, which is a fantastic
Right now, every
thing.
bit of the money I'm making of this goes to the Salvation Army, and again, for those who don't know, this is an organization where 90 cents of every dollar goes to the work of the Salvation Army. The people at the top, the CEO, for example, of the Salvation Army, the person wearing that uniform, makes $29,000 a year. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you compare the Salvation Army to other organizations, they far, far outweigh in service.
Yes, absolutely. And they don't spend the money they take in on themselves. They just put it right back out to the community, which is
they
a
really
wonderful
do.
thing.
It's the most effective organization ever. When you give to the Salvation Army, I promise you, and again, when you buy this book, I'm going to give this to the Salvation Army, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This month we're going to the Salvation Army with every penny from the book, and you just go online to Amazon. It's Rick Dees, Top 40 Greatest Desserts of All Time. And again, it is the greatest dessert book. It is the only dessert book you will ever need. It's a kitchen tabletop book. It's the highest quality book you can imagine.
That's fantastic. Now, when we first got on the phone, Rick, I love the fact that you said, I'm the only billionaire who's not an asshole.
I wish I were. In fact, somebody came up to me the other day. They said, and I always say this, they said, well, what is it? I said, no, it's not really about the money. It's about the amount. So I know. I don't think about the money as much as just it's fun to have a hobby.
Uh-huh.
It's fun to at least give it a try.
Yeah, and you're a classic broadcaster in the sense that you have this wonderful voice and this perfect diction, and you just have this polite, warm way of communicating with everybody. But yet you're so funny, and you just drop these little sarcastic lines every now and then, just to see if people are listening.
Oh,
and
thank
it's
you.
just
that makes my day. Thank you so much.
It's
I
art.
love to write comedy.
It's
I
art.
love to catch people. I was the fattest kid in elementary school, so I remember what made me want to do this and become a performer was in the 5th grade we had a talent show,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the kid who plays the violin, the person who plays the piano,
Right,
and
right.
somebody who recites. I got up and I did stand-up comedy. Can you imagine?
Well, yeah, what made you think of that?
I just thought, you know what? What I'm going to do is lip sync this stupid song. It was called Along Came Jones, an old song, way back
Wow.
by a group called the Coasters. So I did the lip syncing of Along Came Jones. They did a needle drop over the speakers in my elementary school.
Oh, that's great.
And then there's a saxophone solo in the middle of the song. And I reached in my little jacket
Mm-hmm.
and pulled out this silver saxophone that was about 5 inches tall and started playing it. And the kids, I could see them wiping their eyes. They thought it was so funny. And I won the talent contest.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. So you knew right from there, okay, this is what I want. I
said, it's fun to make people laugh. So I started studying everything from I Love Lucy to
Mm-hmm.
it got to the point where I said, who are my favorites in the old I Love Lucy show? There's a lady named Madeline Pugh who wrote wonderful lines, and they'd be in a restaurant, and Lucy would say, wow, oh my gosh, there's Cary Grant, and so Fred would say, oh, come on, he's just people like you and me, and then all of a sudden he saw Ava Gardner. He said, Ava Gardner? And Lucy said, yeah, just people like you and me. And he said, well, she may be people, but she's not like you and me. That type of line that you don't hear anymore.
Yeah, well, it's clean, but everyone gets it, and it's still funny, even if it's not totally edgy. It's great.
It's great. And so I've looked for lines that you could use with everybody,
Yeah, I still think some of the greatest lines that I've reused, and of course we know that the best comedy is stolen. I think there was one joke writer in the very beginning of the world, and we've just all been stealing and repurposing his jokes. But one of my favorite ones, a friend of mine would tell me is that I said, "Are you you're gonna be here at work tomorrow?" And he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, are you gonna take the train if you come in?" He said, "Well, yeah, I think so. And I said, well, what's it going to be? He said, I used to think I was indecisive, but now I'm not so sure. And it's one of those clean lines you can use all the time. It's just
Isn't
great.
that great?
Yeah.
It's fun to look for the lines and look for the ones that everybody can repeat. That's the secret of a great radio show too. If you can say a line that somebody repeats at work and then they get a laugh, that's it, because everybody's favorite person is themselves.
Yeah, there you go.
They tell your joke if they say, Carl Bishop was talking about, who's Carl Bishop? Oh, you've never heard of Carl Bishop? Oh my gosh, everybody's talking about him. That's because they got a laugh. Yeah, that's great. Oh my gosh, Rick Dees, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and man, best of luck with the cookbook. Oh, you too, and your voice is so clear, and it's a joy to listen to your voice, Carl.
Thank you. Listen to me listen for me on the next pharmaceutical spot, or maybe the next time you see a Cialis commercial.
I thought I heard you for Cialis. Also, aren't you the one that says, if rash develops, discontinue use?
Yes, may cause spontaneous banjo playing. All of those things, yeah, man.
Thank you so much,
I've
man.
done them
What
all.
a joy to talk to you.
All right, take care, Rick, and have a great holiday.
I surely will, Carl. Thank you so much.
Well, that's it. Another episode of The Itinerant Voice Actor with me, Carl Bishop. Special thanks to Johnny and Robert at Wise Brother Media, celebrity booker Paul Adamo, my partner in crime David Levin at Brainstorm Inc., and the super talented Noel Honig at the Drawing Room NYC, who created the logo for us. More episodes of Itinerant Voice Actor coming soon. Thanks for listening.